everyone. My name is Brian Nolan, and I have the honor to serve as the president of East Tennessee State University. It is my pleasure to welcome you to today's State of the University address. During this morning's address, I'm going to touch on the following themes. I'm going to outline issues facing the Academy. I'm going to talk some about the impact of COVID. I'll walk through enrollment, provide an overview of budget, planning, and strategy, and then we'll wrap with an eye towards the future. But I want to set by taking us back in time. Today's October the 8th. 2 days from now, it's Founders Day. And 110 years ago on this day, our inaugural president, Sidney Gilbreth, gathered the faculty and the community together and talked about the institution and its purpose in our region. Not only its purpose in our region, but its purpose within the landscape of higher education at that time in 1911. And he outlined the importance of regional service, scholarship, but he outlined the importance of this institution to improve the quality of life for the people of this region. And it's this founding mission that has guided the university throughout its history. And I think it's appropriate that we set comments today and in the days to come within that reflection on the history of the institution, particularly as we celebrate Founders Day in a few short days. But from then to now, many aspects of the purpose of American higher education have changed, but many have also remained the same. We're an access institution. We were formed to provide access opportunities for first-generation, rural, and low-income students to attend college and to realize the American dream. At that point in time, the definition of equity was rural. We were providing equitable opportunities for students who had historically been disenfranchised from the nation's post-secondary system. By nature, we were an affordable university with a high quality and an accent on public service. The primary change between then and now is the importance of research and economic development. And as we stand here or sit here today and prepare to celebrate the 110th anniversary, the importance of research and innovation and the nexus between those two in economic development is critical if we as an institution are going to continue to meet the mission of improving the quality of life for the people of the region. Each year I provide this slide as an update to the campus, the critical issues facing higher education according to ASCU and AGB. And I provide 2008 as a baseline point. That's the Great Recession for those of you who may recall. If you strip COVID to the side, the issues are very similar. Economic forecasts, affordability, equity, access, social justice. The takeaway is, as much as things change, they often remain the same. But COVID has changed the landscape, not only of American higher education, but of this institution and the nation as a whole. So let's talk about COVID. I'm proud of the work that our institution has done, not only to put people first and to keep the campus safe, but also to take aggressive action to keep the region as a whole safe. Our Bucks for Back website has provided a conduit of information for the campus and the community on actions that we have taken as a university to combat the pandemic. From the vaccine challenge to our face coverings mandates to our dashboards and reporting, we've been transparent with the institution every step of the process. But we've also been engaged. There's a number in the first bullet that when I saw that number, I just took a deep breath. 29,000 members of our community have received the life-saving COVID vaccine at the hands of College of Pharmacy and ETSU Health. ETSU Health, under the leadership of Dr. Block, opened the first drive-through testing site. We had the first 24-hour rapid turnaround tests available. We've been awarded grant funding to help get the vaccine out across the region. We began holding clinics in March. We have a clinic this afternoon. And we've put in place a series of initiatives and provided thousands of dollars worth of resources to our students, faculty, and staff to encourage vaccination. If I had the ability to gain a sense of total vaccination rates, my bet is that number would be north of 70% for our staff. It probably would be north of 80% for our faculty. It would probably be north of 65% for our students. I know we are leading this region, but we have more work to do. And I want to thank Faculty Senate President, the Staff Senate President, the SGA President for their advocacy and their efforts to help continue to drive home the importance of us to protect ourselves and to protect one another. We've put our focus on our people. And much of that focus through the CARES has been in providing resources to students. Through CARES 1 and 2, which were distributed in 2020, you see the distributions to students. And just a few short weeks ago, more than $8.2 million was distributed to every student at this institution full-time who is moving through the university. 12,970 students received awards. Focused again, scaled by income. But what I really want to do is to note that number at the bottom of the slide. 5,860 paper checks were cut. That is heavy lifting by the Office of Financial Aid and the Bursar to put that in a form that our students could receive that helps students not only make ends meet, but puts our students in a position to continue to realize the dream of post-secondary education. So we've put our students first in CARES. So now let's talk a little about enrollment and our students in our profile. We all know that COVID has impacted enrollment. That's a given. This chart is from a recent report by the College Board that details the impact of COVID on a state-by-state basis across the nation. Almost every state in the nation witnessed enrollment declines in the face of the pandemic. Some, such as Idaho, witnessed declines year over year of more than 20%. But now let's look at that by sector, because COVID has a disproportionate impact on the institutional sector. You see within the community colleges, at a national level, almost a 12% reduction in enrollment year over year. And in institutions such as our setting, that public four-year, a 2.8% reduction. So the enrollment landscape that we're seeing here at our university is mirrored across the nation, but it's disproportionately mirrored by institutional sector. In many respects, what it's done is it's brought the demographic cliff to us early. If you note on this slide, you'll see demographic cliff, old and new. The projections from a population perspective that put the demographic cliff in front of all of our eyes and attention a number of years ago have been recalculated. The good news is the cliff is not as steep, but it still exists nonetheless. I want to take a minute to kind of walk through how all this impacts us. So many of you who serve on University Council have seen a chart that Dr. Hoff presents where he outlines market, yield, and rates by county. And his takeaway is if we had been able to maintain the same market penetration rate across our high yield counties in 2021 that we had in 2010, we'd be north of 18,000 students. But let's look at that in a different way, because this chart for me really strikes the importance of the mission of this institution, not to just enroll students, but to drive home the importance of post-secondary education as the gateway to the middle class. These numbers for me are extremely troubling. Look at Washington County. That's the county right above the Tennessee average. So we live in a state that launched Tennessee Promise. College is free. And in Washington County, almost a 10% decline in a college-going rate. Morristown, Hamlin County. Look at the double-digit percentages there. So each year I stand before you at this address and encourage you to go back to a neighbor or a friend who's undecided about their future and bring them to this institution. This year I'm asking you to lay another request. Talk to them about the importance of college. Because as I move through today's presentation, you're going to see the direct linkage between educational attainment and a number of variables that impact the quality of life in our region. That's, for me, why this data is important, because it strikes to our mission. We cannot improve the quality of life of this region unless more individuals are moving into post-secondary education. So just as a set, over the course of the past decade in the state of Tennessee, we've got about 30,000 fewer students going to school now than at the beginning of the decade. Here's data for this fall. So this is this fall's enrollment information for the university sector. You see minus the University of Tennessee at Knoxville and Tennessee State University, every university in the state of Tennessee witnessed an enrollment decline year over year. If you look through the chart, notice Middle Tennessee State University, a 1,500 student decline in 1 year in enrollment. The budget implications of that are lasting. Our year-over-year decline is right at 400, but I'm going to share with you some news that shows we're making great progress with respect to incoming students. And here's that data for the community college sector. Look at those community colleges in large metropolitan areas with double-digit declines. Vol State, for example, a 16% year-over-year decline. For those of you who are unaware of Volunteer State, that's right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in the country. So I'm giving this to you as a context, because sometimes we at the university get so focused on blue and gold that we forget to step back and look across the 95 counties of the state. We do not operate in isolation. We operate as part of a system of institutions. Our transfers are interrelated. Our dual enrollment is interrelated. So I'm giving this to you to provide context. So now let's jump in at the university. Here's our enrollment for this fall in comparison to years fall prior. But I mentioned highlights. I'm very proud of the work that we have done to recover our freshman class from COVID. Dr. Joe Sherlin, Dr. Sam Mayhew, Heather Levesque, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for the work that you and your staff did day after day to meet with students and parents at coffee shops, in parking lots. We adapted as COVID was presenting challenges to us, and as a result, we saw a 12% increase in our freshman class year over year. We saw a 6% increase in transfer students, an increase in international students, and an increase in dual enrollment students. That's rebuilding the base, thereby allowing us 3 to 4 years out to cycle through the situation we find ourselves in. And I'm going to show you in a little bit work that we're doing to continue that momentum. So here's our freshman profile. You see the average GPA for our freshman class is a 3.5, right where it's been before. You'll notice that little decline in the ACT. For those of you who have volunteered at our ACT testing sites here or who have children in high school, you know the complications this year's freshmen had in even taking the ACT, so I'm not surprised by the drop there. But now let's look down at our high-achieving students, the APS students. That number of presidential scholars is the largest in the history of the university. High-achieving students, 375, 29. That's demonstrating to me by the growth in those stats that we are the institution of choice for not only students across our region, but students across the state. Let's look at the demographics. Making progress with respect to diversity. But I draw your attention to the bottom of the chart. Diversity by gender is moving in the wrong direction. Just a few short years ago, 41% of the class at the university was male. That number is now 36.5%. And for those of you who paid attention to the scholarship in this area, this is not only a university issue, it's a national issue. And part of it gets to how do we drive home the importance of post-secondary education as a gateway to the middle class, which I'm going to come back to time and time again. I draw your attention here to the bottom right, 1740. Look at the column to the left, 1452. Our out-of-state enrollment changes to the tuition and fee structure that were approved by our Board of Trustees last year positioned us to be very aggressive in our recruitment efforts. Those out-of-state students, that growth is in many respects what balanced our enrollment declines. So we've lost Tennesseans, we're down a little bit in the border county, but the work that we're doing in Charlotte, in Atlanta, in Greenville, in Spartanburg is really helping to push continued growth and diversification across the campus. The international numbers continue to trend in the wrong direction. I'm hopeful with changes in federal policy that this is the bottom of the curve and we can begin to rebuild our international enrollment. But that is the residency profile enrollment for this year. This is data from the Tennessee Higher Education Commission that is very insightful in a number of respects, because quite often we have an interpretation of ourselves as a commuter school with a lot of part-time students. That's not the case. We have more full-time students enrolled at this institution seeking a university experience than most universities in Tennessee. So as I stand here on the 110th anniversary of the university, just 2 short days from now, what I'm asking you to do is not to think about the university that you've known, but to think about the university that we are and that we're becoming. A destination institution for students seeking a meaningful, impactful, and engaged undergraduate experience. We're no longer a school of part-time students. We're no longer a commuter institution. We have changed without realizing the change. This is a piece of data that as we're working through some numbers, and there's a lot of nuance here. I'm not going to talk about every slide in detail. But as you look at your students in your classroom, not all students are the same. That's the understatement of the day. But this is important because it shows essentially two ETSUs from an income perspective. 40% of the students sitting in your class come from families with six-figure backgrounds. 30%, 26, I'm rounding up, a little generous with the numbers, come from families who are full Pell eligible. So there's a different level of need from an advising perspective, an engagement perspective, a counseling perspective, an outreach perspective. So as we look at ways in which we want to drive student success at the university, my takeaway here is we need to be mindful of the complexity of our undergraduate population, particularly as it relates to income. And income then relates to academic preparation, relates to background, and all of this is intertwined. It's the reason why we've made changes in our advising structure. It's the reason why we're looking at a one-stop shop. It's the reason why a lot of the things that we've put in the CULP have been placed, because of the economic distribution and diversity of our undergraduate population. I mentioned recruitment and enrollment. We have transformed the manner in which we market this institution, and that transformation remains underway. From application months to website design, redesign to personalized letter to every single student who's been accepted at the university. Did you know that? Every single student who's been accepted at ETSU receives a handwritten note. We have customized the manner in which we're recruiting. We've segregated our markets to push on primary, secondary, and tertiary with a heavy emphasis here in our region, but as well as Nashville. We've enhanced our branding, and we've put our students first. If you've not had the opportunity to watch the Amazon Prime video, I would encourage you to do so because the stories are powerful. They're the stories of our students who came to this institution and had their lives changed because of the experiences with our faculty and our staff. We have small classes. Our faculty-to-student ratio is 16:1. Our students are well prepared. And our retention rate last year was the highest in the history of the university. So let's transfer a little bit to student success. This is the THEC data for last year. Started ETSU Return Anywhere, more than 80% of our students return year over year, freshman to sophomore. But now here's that data for this fall. University only, started ETSU, returned to ETSU. 11% drop in 1 year. That's COVID. This was a difficult year. It was difficult for freshmen who were taking classes online. It was difficult for freshmen to be detached from the institution, to juggle the challenges of life. So as we're searching for information to explain this drop, because this just isn't here, it's across the country. Spoke to a college president yesterday. This number at her institution was 10%. Well, the Lumina Foundation last fall surveyed students about why they were stopping out. So a little bit after census date, a national survey of the factors impacting students' decisions to stop out. Freshmen, cost of attendance, emotional stress, childcare responsibilities, healthcare, COVID, caring for a family. This is not ETSU survey data, it's national survey data, but I'm confident if we were to ask these same questions at our university in the fall of 20, the responses wouldn't have been much different. Now let's transition to graduation. Here's the THEC data. We were north of 60%, but we still have work to do with respect to graduation rates and student success for diverse populations at the university. I'm proud of the work that Keith Johnson and his staff are doing, but we have more work to do in this space. And as we move through this academic year, I look forward to sharing with you new initiatives and aspects that we're going to put into place to help drive these numbers. But this, for me, is an extreme positive. In the face of a pandemic, we had the highest graduation rate in the history of the university. So our seniors persevered. They pushed through to the finish line. But it's our freshmen that we have a lot of work to do to help rebuild lost time as they're pursuing this ultimate goal. Now let's do a hard shift. By design, the sky in this picture is blue, and it is sunny. I'm not going to say our budget is as sunny as this picture, but I'm pleased to report that our budget is balanced and that we will be moving through this year with no reductions at all to the base budget across the university. So as a reminder, this is how the state funds its post-secondary institutions, 100% via performance. And here's the scorecard by which we as a university are assessed. So it's these criteria through which the state provides assessments and the state distributes resources to its post-secondary institutions. Here's that volume of resources over time. As you can see, once THEC changed the funding formula, the state began to invest in higher education because it was outcomes-oriented rather than enrollment-driven. And you can see throughout a period of time the significant investments that have been made in this university. So where do those investments go? We're a people-dependent enterprise. The bulk of our revenue comes from people, not the state. Those revenues are invested in people. The bulk of those, as you can see, 72%, go to salaries. And then those salaries support the operations of the university that are people-dependent, instruction and research. Tuition and fees drive the revenue, faculty and staff drive the salaries, and faculty and staff drive the mission of the university. So while we're deeply appreciative of the work that we've been able to do in the outcomes arena, that constitutes a little bit more than a third of our overall operating budget. I'm just saying that as a frame and a reminder. So now let's talk about budget for this fall. I foreshadowed this at the beginning of this section. I cannot say enough to thank the leadership of the university, our deans, our chairs, and everyone across the institution for the fiscal stewardship that you exemplified last year. This time last year, as everyone is well aware, we put in place a series of budget reductions due to the enrollment decline. But we also ask you to be wise stewards of the resources to which you had been entrusted. And as we closed the year in a position in which our fallout was pronounced. I'm pleased to report that more than $4 million in carry-forward funds will be distributed utilizing the funding model with a 50-50 funding distribution to colleges and funding units. We're also, in the midst of a pandemic, going to put $1.3 million in reserves. But then furthermore, we're going to use those resources to hold all colleges harmless this fall for any enrollment declines that were experienced. So for any college on campus this fall that experienced enrollment declines, they will be held harmless utilizing these resources. But then also, as we look back at last year, there were 2 colleges that exceeded their enrollment targets, CVAD and the College of Public Health. They will receive funding for that enrollment growth for last year. We will pause and look at enrollment for the spring. After we see enrollment for the spring, then we'll look at model distributions at that point. But the takeaway here is the model's been utilized to distribute carry-forward funds. Money's being transferred to reserves. All colleges are being held harmless. And those colleges that grew last year are being rewarded for that growth. If you would have told me this time last year that we would be able to do this, I would have thought, I don't know what I would have thought because I couldn't comprehend it. We're in this position because of you. And I cannot say thank you enough for the manner in which you have navigated this together as a university community. As a result, we're going to be able to invest in our students, our faculty, and staff. I've referenced the students' investments via CARES. Here are the investments in faculty and staff. And there's multiple bullets here because I want to paint a picture and provide context. As a reminder, every employee at the university received a $500 one-time bonus in July. As a reminder, every employee at the university in May had a health insurance holiday. For that month, we covered your benefits match. That was more money in your pockets for that month. Folks forget about that, but that is an action that we as an institution took. Effective November, there'll be a 3.5% across-the-board salary enhancement. Effective November, we're going to adjust the salary schedules upwards 3.5% so that we can be more competitive as we look to attract new members to the university community. We've adjusted adjunct compensation. We provided wellness days throughout the year, and then we've provided 5 days from an administrative perspective for COVID and 2 days in case you have gone to get your second or third shot and need time to rest the next day. This is an institution that put its people first. It put its people first throughout the pandemic, but it's that people that have driven the university, that have driven the teaching, research, and service mission of the institution. We don't talk about this university enough. We're hardworking people. We're like my father-in-law. We get up in the morning, we go to work, we go about our business, and we never shine a light on ourselves. My father-in-law ran a small business in Greenville, Tennessee. He worked there his entire life, but he never drew attention to himself. It's the same way we do here. We don't draw attention to the quality of this university. We are the #1 RN to BSN program in the state. We're the #13 College of Medicine in the nation with respect to family medicine programs. We're the number 24 college in the nation with respect to the way in which we work with students with learning disabilities. Number 1 program in the state for digital animation and gaming. Number 3 program in the nation with respect to master's degrees in digital marketing. Number 1 program in the state for computer information systems. The number 11 high school in the state of Tennessee is here. The number 15 program in the nation in liberal arts is here. I could go on and on about these rankings. My point here is it's time that we step out of the shadows and step forward and aggressively tell the story of the quality of this university. This is not an institution that is a commuter school. This is a major comprehensive research institution that's recognized nationally for quality. And it's time that we all look in the mirror and begin to recognize that quality as well. In the midst of a pandemic, we did $55 million worth of externally sponsored research. As a university, we invested more than $270,000 of institutional funds to seed and incentivize research among our faculty. And within the annual report that you'll receive as you exit the room today, it tells stories of faculty and the research that they've been engaged in over the past year. Research aimed at healthcare outcomes, research aimed at social justice outcomes, but research that's all part of the mission of this institution. And these are some of the faces of individuals whose stories are spotlighted in that report. I talked about people. Every year we give the Great Colleges to Work For survey. This year, in the midst of a pandemic, there are 2 numbers I want to draw your attention to. First is the 80, faculty and staff well-being. That's the highest rating that this institution has received in faculty and staff well-being. It reflects your recognition that we put people first. And then if you look at the bottom line number, that's 70%. That's the highest satisfaction level that you view this institution in the entire time that we've been giving the Great Colleges to Work For survey. Now there's areas in here in which we still have work to do, but my takeaway is, in a year in which we often felt that the world was falling around us, we as an institution were resilient, we looked out for one another, and that's reflected in this survey data. But over the past year, I'm also proud of a lot of the things we've done as a campus to launch new initiatives. I'm proud of the work that Dr. Keller and faculty in the Honors College are doing as we lead forward with the ETSU Global Year. I'm extremely proud of the work that is occurring within the College of Business and Technology under the leadership of Dr. Pederisi. For those of you who have not heard of the Blue Sky Initiative, I would encourage you to Google it when you get back to your office. But in the midst of a pandemic, one of the major employers in the state of Tennessee reached out to its post-secondary institutions and said, we're looking for a partner, someone who can deliver classes on ground, on site in Chattanooga. We want a bachelor's degree in 27 months. We want curricula that's tailored to the needs of our workforce. And we want to target first-generation, low-income African-American students from Hamilton County. Who stepped forward and led? Dr. Pederisi and his staff. And in less than a year, we will be on ground in Chattanooga offering degrees in computer science to students with guaranteed employment on the back end. We've launched a Doctor of Occupational Therapy program. And I could go on and on and on about initiatives that we've launched. But the takeaway is we did not sit as an institution and wait for COVID to pass. We continued to push forward aggressively with the mission of the university. And in order for us to support that mission, these are the elements that I'm going to take to the board next month in terms of our legislative priorities. Investments in facilities, investments in pharmacy, and investments in the outcome formula. This past year during the legislative session, as you're aware, we received $3.2 million in planning money for a new academic building in the heart of the campus. THEC is presently scoring its capital submissions, and the projects that we've submitted is a renovation to Brown Hall and a new health sciences building. So those projects are being scored now by THEC, and within about a month and a half, we will know where those projects scored. But I want to share with you some kind of future-focused pictures of what these spaces could look like. That academic building, focus on the humanities, focus on the social sciences. At a time in which our nation is questioning the value of the humanities and social sciences, we're looking to build a new building because that is the heart of the enterprise. Right where the University Center is, that building would come to the ground and a new building would rise from its ashes. Here's Brown Hall. This is a rendering of what a 2-phase renovation to Brown Hall would look like. It's more than an $83 million project in total. As a point of context, the last time Brown Hall was renovated was 1969. I was 2 years old, for goodness sakes. That's how long it has been since the state made major investments in the building that makes our health sciences programs move at an undergraduate level. So that's what the entrance might look like. Once again, these are just renderings. You see the hallways on the top, hallways blown apart with common spaces and collaborative spaces. And then chemistry lab present, chemistry lab future. So we're hopeful this building is considered favorably by the commission, but we wanted to let the campus know that this was one of the projects we submitted for funding, and this was the second, an integrated health sciences facility right behind the iLab that would provide a home for many of the forward-facing aspects of the Academic Health Sciences Center. All of that takes vision. And I want to put a little bit of where we are and where we've been in context. You all have heard me talk at length about the Committee for 125, a group that came together in 2012 and 13 to frame a strategic vision for the university. We've not been as prescriptive as we should have been in outlining to the campus the product of work that came from that committee. So in 2 quick slides, I want to remind the campus of the things that we said we were going to do and what we as a campus accomplished in 5- and 10-year thresholds. In a 5-year horizon, we transformed budgeting at the institution. We transformed institutional advancement. We completely restructured the university brand. We reorganized university administration. We restructured university scholarships in the Student Affairs Office. We engaged in outreach to local communities. We revised our campus facilities master plan. We did all this in 5 years. That's a heavy lift. But now let's look at the next 5 years. We launched signature programs. We completed this building. Last year, I stood on this stage, faced an empty audience, and addressed the campus by Zoom. I have dreamed from the moment that I arrived at this university of giving this address in this building. And it's fitting that we give it in this room, because this room is named for a family who has transformed the arts at the university. We're an all-Steinway school. Why? Because of the family that made this room possible. Families all across the region made this dream in the second bullet possible. We've launched a comprehensive campaign that we've just about exceeded the target. We're only 2 years in, and we'll reset and recalibrate that target moving forward. We set as a goal that we wanted to exceed all the other institutions in performance on the Complete College Tennessee Act. When we set that as a goal, I never thought we'd achieve it. Being honest, that meant we were going to beat Knoxville. Last year, what'd we do? We were the top performing university in the state on the outcomes formula. And then as you look at the physical infrastructure, close your eyes and envision this campus in 12, and keep them closed and envision the campus today. Culp, Barton Center, Building 60, Boulevard Commons, green space in the center of campus, renovations to Lamb Hall, renovations to Gilbert Hall. Physically, this is a different university than it was 10 years ago. We did that together. But we realized coming out of COVID, it was time for us to reset the vision. So we spent the better part of 2020 and part of 21 getting ready for Chapter 2. And we paused in many respects so that we had time to welcome our new academic leadership. And I want to thank Dr. McCorkle for her leadership over the course of the past couple of months. And I look forward to seeing the wonderful things that you're going to do in the months and years to come. But we wanted to ensure that the provost was a part of this vision effort. But we also know that the landscape changed, and COVID changed the landscape more than anything else. But I want to pause here for a second. Now, I'm a political scientist, and I don't know what slide number this is. Last night we had 100. I think we're down to 70-something now. But I want to pause on this slide for a reason. I talked about access at the beginning. I talked about educational attainment at the beginning. And I want to talk about it again now through a different light. I draw your attention to the portion that says educational attainment of parent, at least a bachelor's degree, less than a bachelor's degree. In December of 2020, Gallup surveyed Americans, asking them what were their aspirations for their children after high school. For those families that do not have a college degree, less than half have an aspiration of their child going on to college. We have to push on that in this region if we're going to meet our mission. Now let's look at this a different way. You may not altogether be able to see the chart, But this is a question that was asked every single year by Gallup. And the question is, would you say that you are very happy, fairly happy, or not too happy at all? The top chart shows changes in the answer to that question from right after World War II to present. And you see at the bottom, not too happy, 14%. We as a nation are more unhappy than we've ever been at any point since World War II. And that's not just COVID. It's educational attainment. Because look at the bottom chart, 87 to 79. Individuals who made decisions at the age of 18, 19, or 20 not to pursue post-secondary education, that decision carries forward with them through the remainder of their life, and it carries forward through generations. So if we're going to change the way we look and feel about one another, if we want to get past the antagonism and angst that defines so much of our country at this present time, the access mission of this institution is more important than it's ever been. But it's also important because it directly relates to quality of life. And I know there's a lot going on in this chart. Red, you see Washington County. This is the relationship between educational attainment and income. Top end's Williamson, bottom end's Lake. The bulk of the yellow are the counties in our service area. The counties in our service area are in the bottom left quadrant of this chart. Now, let's look at this from a little bit different perspective. We talk a lot about Knoxville. Knoxville's in our service area. We received more applications to this institution from Knox County than any other county in the state of Tennessee. So what I asked Dr. Hoff and staff to do was to look at Knox County and give me a sense of what's happening in Knox County in terms of who's moving in and out of the county and the region, and what types of jobs are they attracting. As you see here, between the period of 15 and 19, Knox County has grown, expanded, and diversified their population with respect to educational attainment, and they're growing jobs. This is our community. Graduate and professionals grown, that makes sense, Eastman, Ballard, and ETSU. But the population that we're wanting to retain, we're losing. As a result, the population in this region is overall stagnant, and we're not seeing diversification of our economy, which drives home, again, the importance of the mission of this institution. So now let's jump to the Committee for 125, Chapter 2. And these data points have framed their conversations. The committee met for the first time on April 28th. I know it seems like I've been talking about Chapter 2 for a while, but they just met for the first time on April 28th. There are 95 participants on task forces. Here's the task forces. We have many of the chairs in the room. And throughout those discussions from April to today, the task forces and the committee have been outlining what they see as aspirational goals for this institution on a 10-year time horizon. Those aspirational goals from the discussions thus far talk about signature programs ranked in the top 10 nationally, that we're a leader in economic development and regional collaboration, that we're diversifying the institution both in terms of our employees as well as in terms of students, and that we're removing barriers to student success. These have been some of the dominant themes that have emerged. We've asked the question, what defines a culture of excellence? Student-focused, letting go of the good to achieve the exceptional. We need to do a better job of communicating. That's a resounding theme at this institution. But that's just not me standing on a stage talking. That's all of you taking this information and going back, saying to your colleagues in your office, hey, the president said this, let's watch the video together. Or he referenced this chart, let's dig into it. Communication is across the institution, but it's also two-way. And then quality. What defines a quality university? I've compared and contrasted this question in Chapter 2 to this question when we asked it in Chapter 1. The bulk of the bullet points are very consistent from 10 years ago to today, minus bullet points 3 and 4. The need to diversify and develop a comprehensive research portfolio, productivity, and a range of patent activities has been discussed with greater frequency in Chapter 2 than in Chapter 1. And then the desire to produce Rhodes, Fulbrights, has been discussed much more in Chapter 2 than Chapter 1. So both internally as well as externally, a recognition that the university is poised to make a significant jump in some of these areas, not leaving behind the access mission of the university. In addition to that work, myself and others have put our ears to the ground and listened and engaged in conversation with people across the region. Between April and today, we've met with more than 300 individual groups of state representatives, superintendents, employers. We've held roundtables, higher education leaders, chambers, communities, and others, getting their feedback on what are their hopes and dreams and aspirations for the university. Now it's time for us to turn our attention internally. We wanted to pause so that the fall semester could get a sense of pace and cadence. The time is now for us to turn our attention internally, to hold focus groups and listening sessions with the campus community throughout the month of October and November so that your voices can inform the final development of this report from the Committee for 125, Chapter 2. That draft report will be completed in January, and then we'll present it to the board in February. For those of you who've paid attention to the timelines, you know I've moved them back. I had hoped to have this work completed by November, but I felt it was important to pause to intentionally take time with our university to ensure that we have collective feedback and input, because I'd rather take a little bit longer and be inclusive than try to push something through a process. I want to pause for a moment and give you my reflections on what I've heard, because I've been in the meetings with the committee. I've participated in the employer forums, the roundtables, et cetera. These are the things that I've heard. These are my reflections on the feedback to date. We're a great institution. Yesterday, I talked to superintendents from across the region, and they went on and on about the quality of the teachers that this university graduates. I've heard that we play a leadership role in bringing people together to talk about difficult issues. We're often defined as Switzerland, the one place that can bring everyone across the region together to have open and honest conversations. I've heard the clear need from business leaders for us to focus in emerging fields such as data science, engineering, biomedical engineering, and mechatronics. The need for us to continue to support the healthcare system, but the fact that without East Tennessee State University, there would not be a healthcare system in this region. We make Ballard run. That our research provides a critical value add, but there's an opportunity for us to do more. But the end of the bullet says it all. The future of this region depends on this university. So this was the vision statement from Chapter 1. I anticipate when Chapter 2 concludes that the vision statement may altogether be that much different. Now I want to go back. Yesterday evening, Donna brought home a copy of The Blue and Gold, which was a magazine / almanac / quarterly that was produced at the institution when we first opened our doors. It came from a family member who was enrolled at the university just a few years after we opened our doors. And as I was reading through that last night, I was reminded of the power of this institution because of its people. As I read through this, it talked about President Gilbreth attending the Public School Officers Association of Tennessee, giving a paper on the economical use of public school funds in the state. I can't tell you how many times I've done that. It talks about Professor Rogers attending regular monthly meetings of teachers in Washington County. You do that. It told stories of alum who had graduated, who'd gone on to work in the local schools. But it told a story of people. It told a story of people. In the end, for me, that's what this is about. The people of this institution doing the things we do to impact our students, who then graduate, return to the community, and keep this moving full forward. This is an institution that puts its people first. It's an institution that is investing in its people. It's an institution, as we look at this year's budget, is going to hold budgets constant. But it's an institution, as we move through the final phases of 125, the people of this institution need to dream bigger dreams for themselves, for the institution, and for the community as a whole. And if we do that, 10 years from now, when we gather in this space and hear this address, I'm confident that you're going to hear accomplishments as significant as the accomplishments that we've collectively achieved over the past year. Before I wrap, I want to take a moment to say thank you to a number of people. I want to thank Dr. Mike Hoff for his work in assisting the preparation and presentation of this material. I want to thank our new deans who have joined the university community. Dr. Horsley and others have moved from across the country to be a part of this mission. Most importantly, I want to thank my wife, Donna, who affords me the opportunity to do this job. I'm not home much. I miss out on much. I can't fix anything. When something breaks, Donna has to fix everything. She snuck in the back. She's in scrubs because she's going to go run a vaccine clinic here later today. But Donna, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this job. I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about the opportunities in front of us, and I look forward to addressing those opportunities collected with you as a university community. Everyone be safe as you travel home. Enjoy your weekend. Godspeed and go Bucks.